Erev, all the kids should sit down. Mal, it's time to sit down, but for me, Chamocha, everyone's going to come up, okay? Okay. Okay? Which one do you want when everybody comes up? Purple? Green? Okay, that'll be the one I give you. All right. There's a lot more where that came from. That light is like blindingly bright tonight. So
Oh, because the lights aren't out. They were out before. That was the issue.
see, it's terrible. I don't even know.
It also didn't look good when you get one light out, you know?
Yeah, just one would be great. Oh,
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Hello, Zoomiverse and YouTubeverse, as well as everybody here. La la la. What a week. La la. So it's nice, really nice to be together. Even though it was so windy outside, I felt like I was getting, like a little electric shock. Not that I know what that feels like, but I felt like that might be that painful. And then I thought, I'm gonna feel like I'm wearing a cozy blanket in a few minutes. And that's what's true about Shabbat. Is my sound is low, right? I'm on though. Oh, Jim, help me, Jim. It's too low. All right, well, tonight is our Shabbat Shlemut, our inclusion Shabbat. Honestly, it's February. We lift up the presence and amplify the people in our community that are sometimes overlooked and not welcome. And that's just not the vibe at Ner Tamid, but we can always do better at being inclusive. So tonight, some of our friends are here. We have an ongoing, really beautiful relationship with many of the residents that live in the Jewish services for the developmentally disabled throughout this region. My buddy Todd is here, and Hagit Oren are here. We'll introduce them more later. But Rabbi, tonight we're just gonna start with
All around.
Just be my echo. Everywhere.
Let's hear you. Everywhere.
That's right. All around and everywhere. Holy, holiness. Kadosh Kedoshim. Kadosh Kedoshim. You got it. We're going to try that again. Here we go. All around.
All around.
Everywhere. Everywhere. All around and everywhere. Holy, holiness. Kadosh Kedoshim. In the highest high. In the highest high. Your turn.
In the highest high.
In the deepest sea.
In the deepest sea.
In the highest.
In the highest high. In the deepest sea. Holy, holiness. Kadosh Kedoshim.
As with me.
As with me.
So with you.
So with you.
As with me. And so with you. Holy, holiness. Kadosh Kedoshim. In my heart.
In my heart.
In your soul.
In your soul.
In my heart
and in your soul. Holy, holiness.
Holy, holiness. Kadosh. Kadosh
Kedoshim.
Kedoshim.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So you may have, by the way, seen lots of new art around our congregation. And much of that art, almost all of it actually, if it's new, was made by members of the Way Center, which is part of JSDD, Jewish Services for the Developmentally Disabled. And so each Shabbat, we have representatives from JSDD come as part of our congregation. And then as part of the ONEG, we really encourage people for this particular month, which is Jewish Disability and Inclusion Month, to go out in the lobby and to really look around and spend time with that art. We really value our relationship with JSDD. And so tonight you're gonna see a bit of a theme woven through at least the service itself. And had the events of this week not been what they were, probably it would have been my sermon as well, though I am gonna address really what happened yesterday in Israel instead. But I wanna just invite all of us to really kind of take in what the spirit of tonight is meant to be, which is this spirit of inclusion. Creating a home and a place where everybody belongs. And so we're going to turn now to Shalom Aleichem, page 24, as we continue at the start of our service.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mirelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni Shalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Amirelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni Shalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitkhem l'shalom, Tzeitkhem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malchei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So tomorrow we're going to invite Nicole up for the very first time to read Torah as she becomes bat mitzvah. And so I'm going to invite her with her family up to light our candles and to bless our wine tonight.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Microphone? You need the microphone too. Ready?
Baruch atah Adonai Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei puri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. Chaim yishar kochech and mazel tov. More to come.
So we're going to turn forward now. We're on page 14 as we join together in the song Or Zaruach.
Oh, yeah, I need this reminder about light. Every time we turn to it, it's there. So let's turn. Oh, Zaruach latadik ulishrei lev simcha. Or Zaruach, try it with us. Oh, bottom paragraph. Zaruach latadik ulishre lev ulishre lev simcha. Now just on yadadai yadai 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 Tzadikim b'Adonai, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, ve'hodo lezecher kodsho again, simchu tzadikim l'Adonai, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, ve'hodo lezecher kodsho. One more time. Oh, Zaruach latzadik, latzadik, ulishre lev, ulishre lev, ulishre lev, ulishre lev, simcha, simcha.
We move forward now. We're on page 20, L'chadodi.
L'chadodi lirat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, yalalai, l'chadodi lirat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nekabelai, shamor v'zachor v'diburecha. השביענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתחילה.
Let's hear you.
לחדותי לקראת קלה, יללי, 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 בני שבת.
נקבלה יאירה לחדודי לקראת קלה יללי יללי בני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ברכה כי מקור הברכה סוף מעשה ומחשבה. Let's hear you. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה, יאילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה.
התעוררי, verse 5.
התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורק קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך. Let's hear you. לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה, יאילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה. We rise and we face the door.
Shalom,
עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגורה, בואי חלה, בואי בואי Shabbat, נקבלה, יאירה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה, יאירה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, ילני, 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 הנה שבת. נקבלה. Page 28.
We join together.
Yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם לעולם ועד.
We're seated together as we turn our attention to the screen. Ma'avir Yom Uvevin Laila, roll into dark, roll into light.
So you can even close your eyes once you memorize this very long passage in English. Rolling together works better when you can roll together. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day,
Day turns to night.
That's it.
Roll into dark, roll into light.
Night becomes day, Day turns to night.
Roll into dark. Roll into light. Night becomes day. Day turns to night. Roll into dark. Roll into light. Night becomes day. Day turns to night.
One more time.
Roll into
dark.
roll into
Roll into light.
night becomes day.
Day turns to night. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv ha'ravi.
Page 32, Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגד יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ואהבתך לתסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Page 34.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
Page 36.
ואהבת
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת אמת.
I was sent an essay today from Jason Rubenstein, who's the Hillel at the rabbi at Harvard Hillel, who I think taught a midrash, a teaching that I had never seen before, but I think is incredibly apt for this being inclusion Shabbat. What he ends up talking about is the idea that when the Israelites crossed the sea, there was a group of Israelites, really just from one tribe, the tribe of Dan, who kind of walked behind everybody else. And because they were carrying all the things that they had in Egypt, many of them ended up dropping things along the way. A piece of clothing here, a little bit of food there, a tambourine there. And as they did, they kind of scooped them up one by one. And when the Israelites got to the other side of the sea, it was Judaism's first lost and found fest. They put everything out and they said, if you dropped this, we've got it for you now. Come take it back. Ultimately, that's what community is. It's about understanding that not everybody can carry the same thing. That some of us with different abilities, some of us are in different places, and some of us are just carrying more, and some of us are just carrying less. And that the job of a community is to ensure that if those people in your midst drop something, if they can't carry what you can carry, that you're there to swoop in and to help and to make sure that they can get to the other side with all that they started with as well. This inclusion Shabbat, our goal, our job is to be like the tribe of Dan, to walk not only next to, but behind those who need it, to support them, and to carry those things that they may need help carrying themselves. Micha Mocha, page 40.
Indeed, I have some helpers about to come up and help us. Uh-oh, maybe not. Oh, bummer. Timing is everything. But other shaker friends, we're going to get this thing going. I've got a few here. Other friends who may want to come up and do some shaking with us. We've got a few. We've got a whole basket, possibly. All right, and we need everyone in the community to watch as these timbrel shakers bring us into freedom. Are we
And
ready?
clap your hands.
1, 2, here we go, friends. Join us, here we go.
Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha netar b'kodesh, Torah tehilot sefer, Torah tehilot sefer. מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה לי, אנו ואמרו, זה לי, אנו ואמרו, אדוני לא לעולם ועד, אדוני לא לעולם ועד. One more time, ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני Ka'al Yisrael. Thank you. We turn to page 42. I mean, they love tefillah so much, they can't get off the bima. It's amazing. Keep it coming. My dream On page
comes true.
42.
Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmor zetenu uvoenu l'chaim u'shalom me'ata v'ad olam. Hashkivenu, we sing together. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Baruch ata Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
Top of page 44, Vishamru.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael
את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם. In a moment, we're going to turn to page 46 and we're going to pray these words. And as this being a Shabbat where we think often about inclusion, I want to just give us one thing to think about, which is that often when we begin, we sing the words, Adonai Sifatai Tiftach, God open up our lips. And usually Cantor leads it, and then we kind of repeat after her. And on the one hand, there's a kind of aesthetic to it, right? It's nice to have it be twice, and it makes sense for her to go once and for us to go once. But the idea of repeating things is actually, in our tradition, originally an inclusion decision. In the ancient world, people used to have to go to the temple to bring their first fruits. And when they would go, and there would be a long paragraph that they would have to recite. And people used to get nervous about doing this because for some, reciting a big, thick paragraph in Hebrew was easy, and for others, it was a little bit scary. It was hard. It was something that they couldn't do. And so realizing that some people may not ever even bring their first fruits because they would be nervous about reciting that long section, the tradition decided that the priest would let nobody recite on their own. Instead, they would give it phrase by phrase, line by line, and the person who would bring the fruits would repeat after the priest. And in doing so, they ensured that you wouldn't know those who knew and those who didn't. Nobody would be embarrassed by what they could and couldn't do. Everybody would be on the same footing. And that spirit of inclusion has pervaded much of Jewish practice from then forward. That 3,000-year-old tradition has become central to what it means to embrace and to bring in those in our midst. Those with varying abilities, those with varying knowledge, those with varying connection to tradition. We rise together, page 44, and we'll move then into silence.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. So before we move into our song Olam Chesed, saying how much the world was built with love, we have a special prayer for inclusion that Todd, who's a resident at JSDD Northfield, is going to read. And so I'm going to invite Todd up now to read that special prayer for inclusion.
You, the one from whom on different paths all of us have come, to whom on different paths all of us are going, make strong in our hearts what unites us. Build bridges across that divides us. United, make us rejoice in our diversity, and at one in our witness to your peace, a rainbow to your glory. Amen.
Thank you, Todd. We're going to just hear those words and that rainbow and that sweet little voice of I love you saying goodbye to the congregation. It was bedtime. I don't know if everyone heard, but it was pretty delightful. And so just how much love we need, that we need to access right now. Olam chesed yibaneh, yarara yidai, yarara yidai. Olam chesed yibaneh, olam chesed yibaneh, yarara yidai, yarara yidai. Olam chesed yibaneh, olam chesed yibaneh, yibaneh, yibaneh. Yarara yidai, yarara yidai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yibaneh. Yarara yidai, yarara. I will build this world from love. I will build this world from love, from love. Yarara, and you must build this world, and you must build this world from love, from love. Yarara, and if we build this world, and if we build this world from love, then God will build this world. Then God will build this world from love, from love. Yarara, bye bye. Yarara.
So 2 or so weeks ago, we welcomed a new member into the Jewish people. Not a member of our community. Taylor's been a member of our community for a while now, but really formally welcoming her into the tribe, into the Jewish people, as she went into the mikveh and she took on a Hebrew name. And so I'm going to invite Taylor to come up to the bima because we have a special blessing for her. We can all rise. All right. So over our year or so working together, we really wrestled with a lot of hard ideas. We talked about God and the role that God played in your life, how anti-Semitism manifests, how Israel played out. And at each turn, I found you to be really thoughtful. And you have a special gift of taking the kind of information that we studied in books, the theory, and applying it to your life, telling a story that spoke to this issue or that issue. And the Jewish people are ultimately storytellers, which means that you have innately that sense that we've been cultivating for 3,000 years just within you right now. And so it's my pleasure to give you this blessing in front of our community to mark this really wonderful occasion. Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah Hu Yivarech et Achotenu Tehillah, bat Avraham Avinu v'Sara imenu. Bevoa lachasot tachat kanfei hashchina, lehistapeach benachalat Yisrael, lehimanot al gerei hatzedek betoch am Elohei Avraham v'Sara. Yehi ratzon shetatzliach b'darka, v'tirei bracha b'kol ma'aseh yadeha v'nomar. Amen. May the God who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless you, who has chosen the name Tehillah, and who has cast her lot with the people Israel. You are truly among us, of God, of Abraham, and of Sarah. May you prosper in all your worthy endeavors, and may the work of your hands be blessed. We are blessed for having you in our community, as we say, Amen. So I offer you this blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'ir Adonai panav elecha v'yikuneka. May God cause God's face to shine upon you and give you grace. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God always smile upon you, granting you a life of wholeness and peace. As together we say, Amen. And maybe we'll sing a little Mazel Tov. What do we think?
Oh, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Yeilanu,
Yeilanu,
Ulecho Yisrael, Yeilanu, Yeilanu, Ulecho Yisrael, Yeilanu, Yeilanu. Ooh, now you go be embraced by your family. Yeah. Yeilanu, Yeilanu, Ulecho Yisrael. Taylor's entire family is here.
Indeed.
Welcome to Ner Tamid.
Yes.
Mazel Tov.
And you're just, Taylor, you're kind of piling on memories on this bima, because I remember it was not so long ago, you and Sam stood up here for a blessing before you got married. Now you have a blessing after your conversion. And so may you have many more wonderful experiences right here on this bima. We can be seated together.
Amen.
As I call up Hagit Oren, who is the Jewish program coordinator for JSDD, as well as Todd, inviting him back up for a special prayer for the state of Israel.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask that you bless the state of Israel and all of Israel's inhabitants.
Mekor chaim.
Source of life, bless and strengthen those who defend the land and ensure their safety and speedy return home. Protect them and guide them.
Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Holy and blessed one, show Israel's leaders your paths so that they may act with wisdom, courage, and dedication, and that they may be unwavering in their pursuit of peace. Strengthen their hearts, but keep their hearts from hardening.
Adonai Poked, God who remembers. It has been over 500 days, and there are still people held in Gaza. Metir Asurim.
Freer of captives, return all those who are kidnapped safe and sound to their homes, without the spilling of more innocent blood, without any more souls being tarnished by horrific acts.
Baal HaRachamim.
Master of compassion, help us hold the humanity and the heartache of the Jewish people, of all residents and the state of Israel, while also holding the humanity and dignity of the Palestinian people. As we are made in your image, remind us of your ways. Spread over us a shelter of peace and fulfill the vision of your prophets. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war. Amen.
So we turn to page 253 with our hearts wide open for those in need of healing of body, mind, and soul. Mishaberak avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach avoteinu mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha liavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. So, yesterday was really hard. It was hard for so many reasons. And I was talking to somebody the other day, actually today, at lunch. I was out with a congregant with the intention of talking about the challenge of Israel. And I was saying to him that, yesterday when I heard how the Bibas kids were murdered, when I heard that Shiri wasn't in the coffin, when I learned that bus depots were blowing up, I actually found myself right back where I was on October 8th. It's interesting that my sense of compassion, right, which I've been really working hard to foster, it took me a really long time to get where I was at the point of the ceasefire, to be able to open my heart in the way that I had. And it's interesting just how quickly my heart just kind of closed up. And I found myself with two overarching feelings, one of which inevitably didn't feel that bad, but a little bit, and the other one felt really bad: anger and hatred. And tonight, I want to talk a little bit about that feeling of hatred, because I have to say, I hated Hamas in that moment, and I still hate Hamas. And we've been raised, I think, partly because we're in this world, and especially in a Christian milieu that we live in right now, that hatred feels like a bad word, right? In fact, my kids, we have a kind of reward jar. If they say the word hate, even if they're talking about Brussels sprouts, they have to remove the thing from the jar. Hatred is a bad word in my house. On the other hand, I think that is the only way that I could describe that overarching feeling that I had as bad news after bad news came yesterday. Now, because of that, I did a bit of a deep dive into the idea of hatred in our tradition. And actually, if you think about it, it's a lot more complicated than you think, right? The key idea, the key kind of moment in our Torah where it's talked about is this idea in Leviticus chapter 19, where it says, do not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. But ultimately, there's two clauses in that small, short line that need to be picked apart. The first is your brother or your sister. It's true that, honestly, I wouldn't necessarily stand for two members of our community hating one another, but if someone is outside of their community, then is hatred actually allowed? Can you feel that way? And the in your heart piece matters also, because it's a matter of what to do with that feeling. Now, I was talking to Josh Katz about this earlier today, and he sent me this essay, this amazing essay by one of the kind of predominant rabbis in the Orthodox world. His name is Meir Soloveichik. And one of the things that Meir Soloveichik pointed out, which I hadn't realized before, is that there was a very famous symposium in the 1970s by a rabbi whose name is Simon Wiesenthal. And Simon Wiesenthal is a Holocaust survivor and had this moment where basically he asked himself, or he was called to the bed of a Nazi who was dying. And the Nazi says to him in this concentration camp, look, I for the most part, like, went along with things, but never did something innately bad, except for this one moment where I murdered this family. And so I'm wondering, as I'm dying, the Nazi had some kind of terminal illness, would you forgive me on their behalf? Because I cannot ever find them again. I can never ask them again. And he says, by the way, nothing will happen to you if you don't abide by what I'm asking. But come back tomorrow if you are willing to forgive me. And Simon Wiesenthal thinks about it, and he ultimately doesn't come back. But after the Holocaust is done, and he becomes one of the kind of preeminent Holocaust scholars and activists in the United States, writes a book called The Sunflower, where he asks a group of leaders, religious leaders across the board, whether or not they will, quote unquote, forgive him. And what they find, by the way, is that, and I didn't realize this, and I've read this book, and I don't know how it didn't jump out at me. There isn't a single Jewish author in the book, about half the authors are Jewish, half the authors aren't, that says that he did wrong by not forgiving the Nazi. However, if you read the Christian thinkers, most of the Christian thinkers actually say that he should have done that. Because, by the way, that is one major divide, I actually think, between Christian theology and Jewish theology, which is Christian theology colored by lines from Jesus like that, if someone does something wrong to you, you turn the other cheek, blessed are the peacemakers, all of that the idea of actually holding hatred in your heart becomes anathema. But for Jews, it may not necessarily be so. The question isn't can you or can't you? The question is, well, what do you do with that feeling? Now, there are certain kinds of hatred that just are not to be tolerated in Judaism. We're told, by the way, that the reason the temple was destroyed was because of an idea called sinat chinam, which, if you actually look at what that means, chinam in Hebrew means free. It comes actually from the same word as grace. And what is grace? Grace is loving someone simply because they are, not because they've done anything to deserve your love. So what would sinat chinam be? Graceful hatred? That would actually be hating someone whether or not they deserve it, not that they've done anything to earn your hate. And by the way, we probably know people who truly do have sinat chinam. And the temple is destroyed because in 70 CE of that sinat chinam. Hatred for the sake of hatred should never be allowed. And indeed is something that we need to fight forever against. But the idea that you should punish yourself for feeling that way, even temporarily, I think is not innate to who we as human beings are. Our ancient rabbis are allergic to the lines in the Torah that tell us not to feel a certain way. Do not covet what your neighbor has. Our rabbis 2,000 years ago said there's no way we can tell people not to be jealous. And so what do? They decide that coveting means scheming to get what the other person has, not just wishing that you had it. And hating another person in your heart means not stewing in that hatred so much that it eats away at you. When Nachmanides, who's an important commentator of the Torah, thinks about what exactly bad hatred looks like, he imagines two people Absalom and Amnon, who are in the Torah, or really in the Bible. And what happens is Amnon does a horrible thing to Absalom's sister, Tamar. And Absalom doesn't do anything about it in the moment. He just stews and he waits. And it looks for 2 years like Amnon has gotten away with what he did. And instead of acting, instead of seeking justice, instead of bringing his brother to his father, instead of finding a way to actually right the wrong, he just gets more and more mad. It eats away at him. He hated his brother in his heart instead of bringing that feeling out into the open. And it destroyed him. It made him toxic. Not only 2 years later did he rise up and actually take vengeance on his brother. In that moment, he then decided to rebel against his father and ended up starting a war with David, the king, because he just couldn't deal. Because 2 years ago, he hadn't dealt with that hatred. He hadn't found a way to let it out. Hating someone can sometimes be like drinking poison for another person. It eats away, it rots you as you feel that way. The Jewish tradition does give you a chance to not forgive. But in the process, you have to find a way not to let it be in your heart, but rather to speak it out. And then eventually to find a way to let it go. Hatred is a really scary notion and flies often in the face of all of the other ideas of peacemaking and bringing together and all of the things that we often privilege and celebrate Judaism for. But Judaism leaves space for you to just have that feeling for a little while, to just let it overwhelm you, to have machinations that sometimes make you feel uneasy, but understand that you are human. I mean, think about the end of the Purim story, right? What is that but a revenge fantasy? It's the ancient Israelites wondering, after Haman tries to destroy them, what it would be like if they just rose up and just went nuts. And they do that. They start a rebellion against their enemies, and they vanquish tens of thousands of people in that moment. And every year, Jews were able to kind of live out that fantasy by having the Purim story in front of them. They were able to dwell in that feeling and not be ashamed of that feeling. Because honestly, if you're able to talk about it, if you're able to deal with it, if you're able to commiserate with somebody and to say it, it's not going to poison you in the way that it poisoned Absalom. It's going to be something that you can actually let out. And then if an opportunity for some kind of creative thinking does arise, you can figure out what to do. In our tradition, we often talk about the way that we are supposed to treat the enemy. And in this week's Torah portion, it comes up. Right? We're told, by the way, that if your enemy's oxen has wandered, you need to return your enemy's oxen to them. If your enemy's donkey is struggling under a burden, you actually have to help to raise that donkey up. What that means, by the way, is not, notice, it doesn't say if a person has an animal that is struggling under, because it doesn't want you to have a quote-unquote enemy. Instead, it gives you permission, but it also gives you a kind of baseline of how to walk through the world. And it makes a point, and this is a big point, that there are two primary mitzvot that you are fulfilling as you are dealing with your enemy. Number one is the need when you see a lost item to return that lost item. And that is a crucially important thing that you don't want to ignore, because ultimately you've got this chance to act in the world the way the religion wants you to, and you're not going to just not take advantage of a mitzvah that comes your way just because it happens to deal with your enemy. And at the same time, you're supposed to take care of suffering animals, which is called sarba alei chayim. And you're not going to just let an animal suffer just because it belongs to the person that you hate, your enemy. So instead, what you do is you acknowledge it, you feel it. And maybe, by bringing them back their animal or raising up their donkey, maybe they become a little less of your enemy. But that's not actually the end goal. The end goal is to not lose track of fundamentally what your ethics are, who you are as a person, what your mandate in walking through the world, just because you feel those bad feelings. Just because your heart feels a little hardened at the time. If you don't return that animal, if you don't raise up that donkey, they have stolen the opportunity for you to walk through the world just a little bit better. They own you. And even as your enemy, they are your master. So allow yourself to feel those feelings, and at the same time, don't let them overwhelm you. You have to figure out how to own the feelings yourself. Anger can be a good thing, but only if you control it. Moses wasn't let into the promised land, not because God told him to speak to a rock and he took a staff and hit the rock. I believe he wasn't let into the promised land because as he did it, he absolutely lost his cool. He yelled at them as rebels, and it went too far. The people were annoying Moses, and he was angry at them. He hated them in the moment, but he lost it. In the way that you want to, if you have kids who are not behaving, you can raise your voice at them. But there is a point by which if you lose control and you start yelling, they have won. If your anger gets so much that you have no control anymore, they have won. You find a way to channel. You remain in control. You allow them to, you allow yourself to remain the person you want to be, so that even after that anger, even holding on to that gross feeling that you might have of hating your neighbor, you still are you fundamentally. Hamas cannot take that away from me. And so I challenge each of us, even as we hold the most yucky of feelings, to not lose track of who you are, your fundamental nature. And in doing so, hopefully, that feeling shrinks just a little bit more within you so that you can learn to deal with it, even as it exists beside you. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to rise together, page 282 for Elena.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu kamishvachot ha'adam ha, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts now turn to those who we have loved and who we have lost. As my eyes go around the room, I'll invite you to share names of people for whom you're thinking, but first I'm going to read a set of names of yard sites. As I call your loved one, I'll invite you to rise, honoring their memory. Marvin Alpern, Anna Appel, Morris Bellett, Francis Berg, Sarah Best, Marcia Birnbaum, Erwin Birnbaum, Dorothy Blackman, Arthur Block, Helen Bronstein, Eshka Brown, Deborah Busin, Isidore Shavat. Robert Cohen, Honi Cohen, Nettie Cook, Philip Cooper, Joseph Ebel, Madeline Ezrin, Merrill Flam, Martha Fritz, James Gary, Claire Genzer, Arnold Glasser, Melvin Green, Ellen Greer, Harry Halpern, Rose Hertzberg, Samuel Indek, Harris Isaac, Susan Jacobs, Leah Kaner Weinstein, Rose Dorrance Coulter, Esther Katimsky, Ralph Kaufman, Jake Kravitsky, Jack London, Angela Maher, Steve Margolis, Cecilia Olinger, Ruth Passvol, Irving Pollen, Doris Pollock, Shelley Price, Ira Resnick, Chris Restiano, Helen Rosen, Sydney Royal, May Rubin, Claire Russ, Leo Sakharov, Henrietta Shiner, Henry Schleien, Esther Schmidt, Jack Schnoll, Manning Schreiner, Gerald Shea, Sam Silverman, Shirley Siskin, Jack Smoger, Minnie Spitz, Morris Stagoff, Harry Starr, Anna Belfer Tobias, Melvin Traum, Josephine Troy, Harry Vigdor, Michael Weinstein, Elsie Weiselman, and Bertha Wien. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, Jarvis Tim Allen, grandfather of Melanie Robbins, Henry Lee Schwartz, father of Kendra Poster, Irving Pizer, father of Jeffrey Pizer. We're going to also mention specifically that our hearts go out to the Bibas family for their losses. I was talking to somebody today who were planning a baby naming, and they're going to be naming their child Kafir in memory of Kafir, the baby of the Bibas family. And the reason they feel so connected, in part, is because their child was born 4 days before Kafir was born. The child is in Shoresh and like a real kid running around, not a baby anymore. And so now, forever, I will watch this child as this child grows up in the community, seeing that ultimately, this is the stage where Kafir would have been in this moment. So I'll invite each one of us, if we have names of loved ones who you might be saying Kaddish for, who may not have been on this list, or who you are within your 1 year period of mourning, to please rise and share their name.
Dina Elka Batshaya.
We rise together, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chai echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mivorach le'olam u'lamei almaya, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתחומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה לשמי דקדושה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה דושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן ביולמה במואמם. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל במואמם. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום. Amen. Please be seated. So a few announcements. So tomorrow morning, services 10 a.m. as we invite Nicole up formally to become Bat Mitzvah. And we want to congratulate her and her family. And Taylor, again, we want to congratulate you and your family. We, in addition to that, have a number of events going on. This Sunday, there's a book talk that I think is very close to many people's hearts. A friend of mine, actually, that I grew up with at camp, wrote a book after realizing that there were lots of books on mourning, but very few books, really none, on the experience of mourning a sibling. And so she's coming, and it's a book called Always a Sibling, and she's going to give a book talk about the experience of what it means to, every loss is different. Losing a parent is different than losing a spouse, which is different than losing a child, which is different than losing a sibling. And there is this kind of an unfortunate club that those who have lost siblings are in. And she's going to talk a little bit about that. And so whether you're in that unfortunate club or not, she's going to be a really compelling speaker. And I hope you can come join us at 4 p.m. on Sunday. And then also, we're part of a soup kitchen that we work with called the Manna Food Depot. And one of our teens, Shana Radoran, is actually putting together a fundraiser for them from 4 to 6 o'clock at Park Methodist, which is down the street. Come, you buy a soup bowl, they fill your soup bowl up with delicious soup. The proceeds of that goes toward paying for Manna Food Depot.
And the
so,
soup bowls are beautiful. They're ceramics. They're made by ceramicists.
Oh, and we also could use some help Sunday at 2 packing Mishloach Manot. And I think today's the last day to send your greetings to somebody. So you would have gotten that email, and so you can respond to that as well. Purim is coming up, and so Mishloach Manot is the kind of care package that everyone gets for Purim, but look out for information. We've got our Purim spiel, we've got our Purim carnival, and in between the two, we've got Purim itself. And so
We have a 10-day Purim at Ner Tamid, just in case.
We do. It's the other Yamim Noraim.
It's the other big one.
Yeah.
And just briefly also to say that throughout the year, our relationship with the Jewish Services for the Developmentally Disabled it's robust. Sometimes we have a dinner together. Sometimes we're planning a Passover Seder during the Chol HaMoed of Sukkot, and kind of other programs. So if you want to get more involved in building those relationships with us, get involved in our inclusion committee, become an ambassador here at Ner Tamid, talk to me about that. And especially thank you so much to both Todd and to Hagit for being here as our guests, but really as part of our community.
So during our own egg, not only meet one another, but take a second to look at the art. I mean, because
More than a
it's- yeah,
second. It's
yeah.
really, really worthwhile. Rabbi, we good?
I think we're
All
good.
right. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. is Chanting Circle, in case you want to do some deep, meditative, amazing praying. Just saying. Tomorrow at 9. So we're going to end, right, Ed? We're going to end with the way we began. All around,
All around,
everywhere,
everywhere,
all around and everywhere. Kadosh Kedoshim, holy, holiness, Kadosh Kedoshim, Kadosh Kedoshim, in the highest high,
in the highest high,
in the deepest sea,
in the deepest sea,
in the highest high, in the deepest sea, holy, holiness, Kadosh Kedoshim.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, everybody.